Wends is a historical name for Slavs living near Germanic settlement areas. It does not refer to a homogeneous people, but to various peoples, tribes or groups depending on where and when it is used. In the Middle Ages the term Wends often referred to Western Slavs living within the Holy Roman Empire, though not always. Mieszko I, the first historical ruler of Poland, also appeared as Dagoma, king of the Wends. The name has also survived in Finnic languages denoting Russia. People termed Wendus in the course of the history. According to one theory, Germanic peoples first applied this name to the ancient Venetia, and then after the migration period they transferred it to their new neighbors, the Slavs. For the medieval Scandinavians, the term Wends meant Slavs living near the southern shore of the Baltic Sea, and the term was therefore used to refer to Pelagian Slavs like the Obotrites, Rugian Slavs, Veleta, Lutusi and Pomeranian tribes. For people living in the medieval northern Holy Roman Empire and its precursors, especially for the Saxons, a Wend was a Slav living in the area west of the river Oder, an area later entitled Germania Slavica, settled by the Pelagian Slav tribes in the north and by others, such as the Sorbs and the Milcheni, in the middle. The Germans in the south used the term Winder instead of Wend and applied it, just as the Germans in the north, to Slavs they had contact with, e.g., Pelagian people from Bavaria Slavica or the Slovenes. Following the 8th century, the Frankish kings and their successors organized nearly all Wendish land into marches. This process later turned into the series of crusades. By the 12th century, all Wendish lands had become part of the Holy Roman Empire. In the course of the Ostsiedlung, which reached its peak in the 12th to 14th centuries, this land was settled by Germans and reorganized. Due to the process of assimilation following German settlement, many Slavs west of the Oder adopted the German culture and language. Only some rural communities which did not have a strong admixture with Germans and continued to use West Slavic languages were still termed Wends. With the gradual decline of the use of these local Slavic tongues, the term Wends slowly disappeared, too. Some sources claim that in the 13th century there were actual historic people called Wends or Wends living as far as northern Latvia around the city of Wenden. Henry of Livonia in his 13th century Latin chronicle described a tribe called the Vinder. Today, only one group of Wends still exists: the Lusatian Sorbs in present-day eastern Germany. Roman-era Venetia. The term Wends derived from the Roman-era people called in Latin Venetia, Venedi or Venethi, in Greek Omicron epsilon mu epsilon delta alpha iota, Wende. This people was mentioned by Pliny the Elder and Ptolemy as inhabiting the Baltic coast. History. Rise in the first millennium CE, during the Slavic migrations which split the recently formed Slav ethnicity into southern, eastern and western groups. Some West Slavs moved into the areas between the rivers Elbe and Oder, moving from east to west and from south to north. There they assimilated the remaining Germanic population that had not left the area in the migration period. Their German neighbors adapted the term they had been using for peoples east of the river Elbe before to the Slavs, calling them Wends as they called the Venedi before and probably the Vandals also. In his late 60 Armenian histories, Moses Korenatzi mentions their raids into the lands named Van and after them. While the Wends were arriving in so-called Germania Slavica as large homogeneous groups, they soon divided into a variety of small tribes, with large strips of woodland separating one tribal settlement area from another. The tribal names were derived from local place names, sometimes adopting the Germanic tradition. Settlements were secured by round burgs made of wood and clay, where either people could retreat in case of a raid from the neighboring tribe or used as military strongholds or outposts. Some tribes unified into larger, duchy-like units. For example, the Obotrites evolved from the unification of the Holstein and Western Mecklenburg tribes led by mighty dukes known for their raids into German Saxony. The Lutusi were an alliance of tribes living between Obotrites and Pomeranians. They did not unify under a duke, but remained independent. Their leaders met in the Temple of Rethra. In 983, many Wend tribes participated in a great uprising against the Holy Roman Empire, which had previously established Christian missions, German colonies and German administrative institutions in pagan Wendish territories. The uprising was successful and the Wends delayed Germanization for about 2 centuries. Wends and Danes had early and continuous contact, including settlement, first and mainly through the closest South Danish islands of Man, Lolland and Falster, all having place names of Wendish origin. There were also trading and settlement outposts by Danish towns as important as Roskilde, when it was the capital. Vindebodde is the name of a city neighborhood there. Danes and Wends also fought wars due to piracy and crusading decline. After their successes in 983, the Wends came under increasing pressure from Germans, Danes and Poles. The Poles invaded Pomerania several times. The Danes often raided the Baltic shores. The Holy Roman Empire and its margraves tried to restore their marches. In 1068–69, a German expedition took and destroyed Rethra, one of the major pagan Wend temples. The Wendish religious center shifted to Arkona thereafter. In 1124 and 1128, the Pomeranians and some Lutusi were baptized. In 1147, the Wend Crusade took place. In 1168, during the Northern Crusades, Denmark mounted a crusade led by Bishop Absalon and King Valdemar the Great against the Wends of Rugia in order to convert them to Christianity. The Crusaders captured and destroyed Arkona, the Wendish temple fortress, and tore down the statue of the Wendish god Svantevit. With the capitulation of the Rugian Wends, the last independent pagan Wends were defeated by the surrounding Christian feudal powers. From the 12th to the 14th centuries, German colonists settled in the Wend lands in large numbers, transforming the area's culture from a Slavic to a Germanic one. Local dukes and monasteries invited settlers to repopulate land devastated in the wars, to cultivate the large woodlands and heavy soils that had not supported agriculture beforehand, and to found cities as part of the Ostsiedlung. The Palabian language was spoken in the central area of Lower Saxony and in Brandenburg until around the 17th or 18th century. The German population assimilated most of the Wends, meaning that they disappeared as an ethnic minority, except for the Sorbs. Yet many place names and some family names in eastern Germany still show Wendish origins today. Also, the Dukes of Mecklenburg, of Rügen and of Pomerania had Wendish ancestors. Between 1540 and 1973, the kings of Sweden were officially called Kings of the Swedes, the Goths and the Wends. The current update Swedish monarch, Carl XVI Gustaf, chose only to use the title King of Sweden, thereby changing an age-old tradition. From the Middle Ages, the kings of Denmark and of Denmark-Norway used the titles King of the Wends and Goths. The use of both titles was discontinued in 1972. Other uses. Historically, the term Wends has also occurred in the following contexts. Until the mid-19th century, German speakers most commonly used the name Wenden to refer to Slovenes. With the diffusion of the term Slovenish for the Slovene language and Sloenen for Slovenes, the words Windish and Winder or Wend became derogatory in connotation. The same development could be seen in the case of the Hungarian Slovenes who used to be known under the name of Wends. It was also used to denote the Slovaks in German texts before c. 1400. Sometimes it was used in reference to the historical region of Slavonia and its inhabitants. Note that the historical territories of Slavonia spanned not only current-day Slavonia but all of continental Croatia. A Finnish historian, Matti Klinger, has speculated that the words Wends or Vandals used in Scandinavian sources occasionally meant all peoples of the eastern coast of the Baltic Sea, from Pomerania to Finland, including some Finnic peoples. The existence of these supposed Finnic Wends is far from clear. In the 13th century there was indeed a people called Wends or Wends living as far as northern Latvia around the city of Wenden, and it is not known if they were indeed Slavs as their name suggests. Some researchers suspect a relationship with Finnic-speaking Vosgians.